Welcome back to Chad Jitsu, where we dive balls deep into the world of BJJ and combat sports. Today, we'll be talking about one of the most controversial figures in BJJ and in combat sports in general, Mr. Dillon Danis. We're going to be talking about before he became a professional meme and a professional social media troll, how he once had some promise in the BJJ world. We'll go through his upbringing and what ultimately led to his downfall. Dillon Danis started training jiu-jitsu at the age of 15, right after he got into a scuffle in high school. Even at a young age, as a young teenage boy, he was starting unnecessary scraps out in the street. From there, he went and joined Jaime Cruz's academy in New Jersey, and he began training diligently. After falling in love with the sport and gaining and growing passion, he heard about this little-known legend, little-known Giga Chad, Marcelo Garcia. And lucky for him, Marcelo Garcia's training gym was only a hop, skip, and jumping away in New York. He made the trek over to New York by subway as a young teenager in order to get the best training he possibly could with Mr. Marcelo Garcia. At the young age of 19, Dillon Danis said, "This is what I want to do for a living. I want to be a full-time professional grappler. I want to pursue greatness and become a grappling world champion." So at 19, he set his sights and trained full-time with Mr. Marcelo Garcia. We could see Marcelo's influence in Dillon Danis' game. Marcelo was known for his great guillotines and front headlock offense, as well as his great back takes and rear naked choke finishes. Danis also had a very strong front headlock game and would also use his front headlock game to get to the back. Both also have an excellent X-guard. Marcelo made the X-guard popular coming up, and Danis followed his sensei and used the X-guard to wrestle up and sweep his opponent. As Danis climbed the ranks, he won several Pan American Championships and IBJJF World Championships. He won the Pan American Championships and IBJJF World Championships at Brown Belt in 2015. In the April of 2015, Marcelo Garcia granted Dillon Danis with the prestigious black belt. Dillon Danis was only 22 years old at this time, very young for getting his black belt. Some would say this is where your actual career starts and where the actual record begins. But also, he's young in his career. In grappling, your prime is later than it is in MMA. Some say it's because your prefrontal cortex develops more and you're able to make more rash decisions. Your strength becomes more developed, and in jiu-jitsu, you're not using as much explosive movements. Also, in jiu-jitsu, you're not taking damage or strikes to the head, and therefore you can have a longer career and grapple more often compared to striking sports where you have to take blows to the head and they take time off in order to recover and prevent brain damage. This is not the case in grappling. As long as your joints are intact and are feeling buttery smooth, or maybe you take some ibuprofen and feel fine, then you can grapple as long as you'd like. And therefore, most say your prime in grappling is in your late 20s and early 30s. Dillon Danis at this point is only 22 years old. He has several years to develop his game and learn from the best and learn from his competitions in order to be the best Dillon Danis he could be, and one day, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, become a grappling world champion. Dillon Danis would go on to win the IBJJF Pan Championships in 2016. This would be one of his last major tournaments that he would win. Winning one of these three major IBJJF championships, either the World Championships, the Pan American Championships, or the American Nationals, means you're a top-level elite grappler, especially if you win it at the black belt level. This solidifies you in a position to be one of the best grapplers in the world. However, this would be the last tournament Dillon Danis would win at black belt. At black belt, he would go on to have wins against very promising and good opponents. He had a win via triangle choke against Josh Hinger, a very tough ADCC competitor. He would have a win over Patrick Gaudio and a win over Tex Johnson via guillotine. However, he would also have quite a few losses. The Danaher Death Squad seemed to be Dillon Danis' kryptonite coming up. He lost to Gordon Ryan, he lost to Gary Tonin several times, and he even lost to Jake Shields a couple of times. Or just once, I believe. These losses and the Down Her Death Squad ate at Dillon Danis, and they struck a little bit of beef, but nothing too crazy. Danis's black belt career record is 18-16, which was pretty lackluster. However, in some of these high-profile matches with some of the most elite grapplers, such as Gary Tonin and Gordon Ryan, he proved to be a tough out for these fellas. He was able to maintain good position and was able to compete with some of the best in the world, showing he had promise in the grappling game, and that if he stuck with it, he would have probably been pretty good and may have won a ADCC championships or further won a world championships, but we'll never know. However, in 2016, a life-changing event would happen to Dillon Danis. During this year, Conor was having a rematch with Nate Diaz where he got choked out by Nate Diaz in the first matchup. Conor wanted to improve his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and was looking to add somebody to his camp to improve that. He decided to go with Dillon Danis and gave Dillon Danis the call and the opportunity to come train with him in Ireland. Now this begs the question, why would Conor choose Dillon Danis? There's so many other grapplers he could have chosen, such as Craig Jones, Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin, and a host of other high-level grapplers who may have had better records than Dillon Danis. It's just something that raises a question in my mind, why would he ask Dillon to come over? Is it because Dillon was cheaper than these other guys? Was it because Dillon was willing and able to come over to Conor? Was it because he was maybe looking to go to a transition to MMA later on, whereas the other guys were absolutely 100% focusing on grappling? I don't know, but this begs an interesting question. During this time, Conor McGregor was taking over the MMA world, calling his shots, trash talking, being flamboyant, and everybody was in love with Mystic Mac. And Dillon Danis was no different. He got a lot of attention being a part of the team building up to this McGregor-Diaz 2 fight. Also, not to mention, Diaz is friends with Jake Shields, and Jake Shields is part of the Scrap Pack. If you remember, Jake Shields and Dillon Danis had a BJJ match, and Danis lost to him. So this was not any bad blood lost. And leading up to the fight, the second fight between Diaz and Conor, the two teams would get into several scuffles, and Dillon Danis was in the center of it. As time would go on, after Conor won the second rematch, Danis would receive even more attention and get into even more scuffles being a part of Conor's team. He would go on social media and trash people and be more into this bad boy persona modeled after Conor. He drank the Conor McGregor Kool-Aid. However, Dillon Danis' original sensei, his black belt giver, Mr. Marcelo Garcia, did not approve of these antics. In 2017, Marcelo cut ties with Dillon Danis and said he was not allowed back in his gym due to his off-the-mat antics. This was the beginning of the end for Dillon Danis. In his next 7 matches, he would go 1-6 in BJJ, a pretty bad record. And in 2017, in his final grappling bout, it would be at the ADCC Championships. Since that moment, he has not grappled. Dillon Danis drank the Conor McGregor Kool-Aid and decided he would make a transition to MMA after getting severed from Marcelo Garcia's gym. He lost sight of his original passion, being a grappling world champion. While he was out there playing touch butt in the park with McGregor and friends, other grapplers were diligently working and improving their skills. They widened the gap between themselves and Danis, and even new grapplers closed the distance and surpassed Dillon Danis. Danis would have a short and very unimpressive career in MMA. Eventually, he would sign to Bellator and have 2 very unimpressive bouts with 2 very unimpressive opponents. In the first bout, he was getting pieced up by a guy with a losing record on the feet. A guy would throw a stiff overhand right, and all Danis would do was back straight backwards. He would desperately try to reach for a takedown, and he would just pull the guy on top of him and eventually get the toe hold finish. His takedowns were extremely sloppy, and his striking was even sloppier in these bouts. He would go on to get 2 submission finishes in each of these bouts, but he has not had an MMA bout since. Since then, the only competition Dillon Danis has done was a boxing match with Logan Paul in 2023, which turned out to be absolutely horrendous for Dillon Danis, as he looked terrible in that bout and embarrassed himself. Since Dillon Danis' departure from the sport in 2017, the grappling sport has taken off significantly. In 2017, Gordon Ryan was just beginning his legacy. Now he has cemented himself as one of the best grapplers in ADCC history. Also, grapplers can now make more money than ever, and the popularity has reached astronomical levels. UFC Fight Pass, that's the Fight Pass Invitational, where grapplers can make money grappling in front of the big stage at the UFC stage, the biggest premier combat sports stage. There's also bouts at Karate Combat in the Pit. We also now have CJI for athletes to make a significant amount of money. And also ADCC gets bigger and bigger with each new event every 2 years. Grapplers can now also make a lot of money selling instructionals online, and they can also make even more money now with seminars and opening their academy with the increasing popularity in BJJ and with the common man wanting to do BJJ. This begs the question, would Dillon Danis have had more success if he had said no to Conor and not helped him train for his fight? Would we see a sharper Dillon Danis on top of the grappling world, looking to cement a legacy like Gordon Ryan in the ADCC history books? Maybe even not as good as Gordon Ryan, but maybe at least a one-time ADCC champion, or at least have an academy where he could have his own students. Would he still be with Marcelo? We will never know. Instead, he has lost his way, and he's a joke to the grappling community, and he's a joke to the MMA community. The only thing he does now is troll on social media and say outlandish things, and that is the only reason he stays relevant in the media. It's a sad story with Dillon Danis, but unfortunately, this was his downfall, accepting to go with Conor McGregor and drinking the Conor McGregor Kool-Aid.